Hello, it's Brad Laurie of BlockchainBrad, and today we're speaking about a buzzword in the crypto domain right now, and that is Mantra DAO. To do that, we have one of the key executives with me to explain this further. His name is John Patrick Mullin, and as I said, he's one who really does know a lot about Mantra DAO and exactly what they are doing. John, thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much, Brad. Glad to be here.
You're welcome, mate. Now, for those who are wondering exactly why I'm talking about them, well, it's all about education, transparent information for all of us from the source. Am I invested? No. Do I own tokens? No. Do I want to learn more? Yes, that's why we're here. So John, thank you very much for taking the time. This is going to be a roll up the sleeves, long interview, mate, because we want to get stuck in and learn exactly what you stand for. Now, Mantra DAO, that's exactly what you're building. Let's find out a bit about you first. Give us a bit of a rundown on your professional, experience. What led you to get to this point that you feel confident you can lead this out?
Sure. Yeah. So, again, originally from the USA, spent a lot of time abroad. So did my education mainly in Europe, got sent over to Asia, which I've spent the last 5 years between Shanghai and Hong Kong. So currently I'm based in Hong Kong. Really got full-time into the crypto space about 2016. Although I was working at a bank at the time, but I was doing crypto research at the bank. So I was working at a bank in Shanghai called Guotai Junan Securities, and we were doing blockchain, crypto, fintech research for the C-suite, essentially. Ideally, it was meant to have some sort of proprietary investment coming later, but that never ended up occurring, at least not while I was there. But anyway, so 2016 really kind of got, delved into crypto and blockchain in a more deep sense by doing research reports on a kind of weekly and monthly basis for the firm. I ended up quitting my job at the end of that year to start my own startup at the time, which lasted for like a week. Fortunately, I was able to kind of join another firm that I had been helping with an ICO fundraise actually, and set up their Hong Kong office with our other council member on the Mantra side, Will Corkin.
Right, and I just want to jump in there. Now, what is interesting is when I'm researching through Mantra, it's very clear that there is a strong Asian presence in these sort of iterations. So your experience having been relatively international, we talked pre-interview as well about your travels. That makes a lot of sense as I start to explore this, and we'll explore a little bit more about perhaps those connections later. But let's push it forward now to this idea of community-governed DeFi platforms. You mentioned Will as well.
Yep.
So the lead up to Mantra is clear. You definitely were interested in this professionally and even personally, but then you moved into this notion of Mantra DAO, especially with DAOs. They're very, prominent discussion now, but you've been building this for a while. Yes,
that's correct. So I guess one thing I didn't really get to mention is, again, this is part of a broader play within RioDeFi, which is, another company that I'm involved in as an advisor. So our seed investor, Calvin Ung, invested in both Mantra and in Rio. And part of that is how we got connected. And essentially, we had taken some of the concepts and ideas that were originally in a more centralized manner within the RioDeFi plans and roadmap, and kind of, or at least are planning to decentralize them and put them into this DAO structure under Mantra DAO, whereby the community and the token holders are the ones who kind of govern the decision-making process of how we move forward, both on our kind of staking and lending side. So essentially the way that we frame ourselves as, or kind of how we've kind of envisioned and positioned ourselves is to be a community-governed kind of like a credit union of sorts. We don't like to use the term bank so much because it's kind of stodgy.
Yes,
but
especially more for us in crypto.
100%. Although I used to work in one, but but yeah, but yes, I totally understand. So we try to stay away from that a little bit, and essentially we have taken these ideas and try to put them into a more decentralized fashion, whereby again the token holders are the ones who govern the decision. Right now, the Mantra token is not on our mainnet, so it's an ERC20 token. We have a kind of a 2-token model that we wanted to create. The first model is the ERC20, and we're like the fundraising token of sorts, the IOU to get us to mainnet. Once we're on the mainnet coin, which is going to be within the next coming months, I don't want to give a set time just yet, because that puts pressure on puts pressure on our tech guys and our devs.
Yes, very smart move. But what's interesting,
like
is that you do have access to this, even if it is in the ERC20 scenario, and it is an IOU of sorts to the crossover into mainnet. It does exist. We are going to talk about that very specifically later with regard to the OM as it's known. But I want to pull it back because there are people listening who don't know what a DAO is. They don't understand, why this is important. They don't even perhaps know the deep reasoning behind DeFi as an agnostic term. So let's talk about that. Why does DeFi matter? Why do DAOs matter in the context of crypto today?
Sure. Good question. I mean, I think first, why is DeFi important? And I think it actually goes back to my more traditional past, working in a financial institution. Again, you get to see and have access to all different types of financial services and products when you're at a certain level in society, or you have a certain socioeconomic status. But for a lot of people, they just don't have access to these types of things. They don't have access to a savings account. They don't have access to investment products, at least easily. Of course, fintech's trying to change this, but they don't have it, again, through a kind of decentralized or permissionless manner. And that's essentially what Mantra is trying to do, is create these financial products in a more permissionless manner, where you can have like a savings account with Mantra DAO.
Right, and John, just to jump in there, especially in developing regions of the planet as well. You 100%. Talk about Asia, but obviously there's potential in other regions such as, and continents like Africa, like South America. 100%. See that emerging. So it is exciting that you're a proponent of that.
100%. I mean, we were actually blown away by when we did our token offering the other, I guess 2 weeks ago, I think. I can't even remember now. It's been too crazy.
We're going to talk about that, don't worry.
But essentially we had over 81 countries participate in our offering. And to me, that's just mind blowing. I mean, there's 81 people, like 81 countries around the world who know about Mantra DAO and are participating in, this decentralized platform. So, that's really cool in our opinion.
And what's exciting, I don't want to make this too informal, this interview, but, the way that you speak, we have to say, it's exciting that a lot of those people aren't in the banking sector. Those participants are actually,
definitely not.
Those people who are perhaps thinking progressively, they're thinking ahead, they understand beyond crypto, what is blockchain, what this can actually do in the DeFi setting for the future of finance. So, please go on with that reference, because I think a lot of young people especially, are starting to see this is not just a bubble inside crypto. This is something that has real utility.
Sure, 100%. And I mean, I think that's where we've kind of taken the savings part and made it like essentially your savings by your staking. And with your staking assets, you are also not only getting an interest or some sort of savings reward, but you're also, securing the network essentially. So we're big proponents of POS chains. Again, rocking the Kusama shirt, big fans of DOT.
Well, we're going to find out why, because you keep on jumping ahead. But, obviously that technological premise or that underpinning is going to be really important. So once again, if we pull it back, DAO really matters clearly, as you explained. Yep. Decentralized, meaning that it's literally breaking down that centralized control. Allowing the people to have essentially control by having increasingly more decentralized scenarios. But, in the context of, I guess, what's emerging through the potential of cryptocurrency itself, the tokenization of blockchain. Why does all of that matter as well as we start to move forward? Why is blockchain evolution?
Well, I think for us, I mean, it really does allow us to have that kind of trustable global reach, because again, your savings account is being put on a blockchain, so anyone can see, what you're going to be receiving based on the set staking rewards for that specific asset, right? You'll be able to see if you're getting your own transferred to you as an additional interest on top of your savings from your staked assets. You're going to be able to see when you take out a loan, exactly, how the mechanism internally works, and that we're not cheating you and we're not liquidating your collateral if the market moves against you in an unfair way, for example. So all of this stuff does need to be transparent, and you do need to have some I guess window into how these products work. And I think in the traditional sense, in the traditional banking sector, you don't. It's a black box. Right. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And to the other side, you also are putting a lot of trust into the fact that these banks and institutions are securing your assets. So at least on our side, with the staking particularly, we are a big proponent of non-custodial staking. You are basically delegating your assets to our node infrastructure, validators, but you don't actually end up giving them to us. You maintain control. You will be rewarded with the OM on top of it on our platform, which you can then withdraw and do whatever you want with it. But we don't actually hold your staking rewards or your staked assets.
And once again, I really want to get into the detail of the staking. I think what matters, in this sense, is that once again, you're creating something that gives autonomy back to the user. Allows us to dictate. And like you said, that idea of the credit union is a great analogy, because that originally was actually designed for the people back in the day, pre-bank. So you're kind of reconceptualizing the way that banking can actually work for us as individuals rather than for banks. But we still need to find out, how you're involved, whether there's an initial centralized aspect of that.
Sure.
Now, one of the things that is interesting is there's a claim that you make as a team that you leverage the wisdom, as it said, of the crowd to create a community-governed, transparent, and decentralized ecosystem for Web3. Now, what does it mean to, in the context of Web3? You mentioned the reference Kusama, you're rocking that shirt, but behind that is also Parity, a technology company. And you have Web3, it's a movement. So and then you have Kusama, which is related to the substrate. Tell us a bit about those interconnections, why they matter, and where Mantra DAO fits in that context.
Sure. So I think there's a lot to unbox there, but let's start with maybe substrate. So RioChain is a chain built on substrate, actually. So RioChain is what Mantra DAO will be built on. It'll be where the mainnet token of Ohm is also issued on. And essentially, it'll allow for us to create all of these kind of, the staking platform where we're able to integrate multiple different blockchains to be able to then distribute Ohm on top, as well as for the cross-chain kind of like multi-collateral lending. So, if you look at an existing kind of crypto-to-crypto lender such as MakerDAO, again, that's all based on the Ethereum blockchain, and you can wrap assets and things of that nature, like they do with WBTC and whatnot. But we want to create something that's a little bit more accessible and easier. So that's partly why we are big fans of Substrate. That brings us then into Polkadot, which is obviously a key component for us. We're big fans of the Polkadot governance process, which we've taken some inspiration from, and how we've designed our governance process as well. And I guess the other thing is Kusama. So we're aiming to be, we are essentially a validator already on Kusama. And we're focusing on supporting assets within the Polkadot ecosystem as validators in the broader network. So I can't necessarily give like names of projects that we're talking to at the moment, but from our
but you probably get in trouble with the NDA.
Well, I won't. I won't.
But John, it is interesting you say that, because not only are you involved directly with the validators with Kusama, I read that in the information, but also with Polkadot. So what are your thoughts on when people say that Kusama is just this canary cousin? Clearly the audits have been put through, clearly they're establishing their own ecosystem. It's a vast number of validators in that ecosystem right now. What are your thoughts on that in connection with Mantra DAO and, again, understanding the reasoning behind working with these guys?
Sure. I mean, so also just for context, both myself and Will Corkin are both ambassadors for Polkadot in general. Okay. So we do have, some connections to the Web3 Foundation and Parity, and we are meant to, further the idea and adoption and awareness of both of those projects.
Right.
So aside from just that on a personal basis, we do see that there's a lot of need for projects to be able to build on something that's a little bit more affordable for them, that's maybe a little bit more scalable and easier to access. Polkadot is an enterprise, in our opinion, enterprise grade blockchain solution. And there's economic costs behind that. Running a parachain on Polkadot for most projects is completely out of the realm of possibilities. We don't know exactly.
And a lot of people don't understand that, and that's perhaps why the canary cousin is so attractive to that initial startup. The young startup that's trying to build something, because it is that. I think the analogy is, the idea of an orchestra being Polkadot. This is, or a symphony as such. This is the garage band moving into something more, where people can start to experiment, to tinker, but also take it seriously and build something that's beyond just, this idea of an unaudited cousin.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think maybe the branding in the initial stage was potentially a bit off in that regard. You know, it's not, Kusama is not a joke blockchain. It's not a testnet.
Yeah, exactly.
But a lot of people think that, you know. So you know, obviously, we're trying to further the awareness of what Kusama actually is, and how there's a lot of applications that don't make sense to be built on Polkadot because of the economics behind it, because it's too costly, because, you know, maybe it's not fast enough, not scalable enough. There's also a lot of products that would not work on Kusama. You know, a lot of financial products, because they have that need for enhanced security and governance, are obviously better off on something like Polkadot. But if you have, you know, maybe a gaming app or, you know, some sort of NFT project, that makes a lot of sense for Kusama because, again, cheaper to access, more accessible, still safe and secure with a very interesting governance process. You still get a lot of the same resources as you would from Web3 if you're working, you know, on Kusama. But it's just a little bit more accessible for people. You know, obviously they share similar development languages, so that also helps. You know, if you can work on Polkadot and develop on Polkadot, you can also develop on Kusama, just like you can develop on RioChain.
Yeah, I think that's part of the appeal. You know, we see the likes, for example, of Consensus linking across to Ethereum, a lot of their tooling suite. You also see the same with Parity. You see the same with the substrate. So having that continuity, having some of those even technological connections is going to be valuable in the future. 100%. But I want to ask you this tough question. Right now, there's a lot of push for DeFi, and there's a lot of hardcore maximalist devs out there in the Ethereum camp saying that DeFi essentially is linked to Ethereum. They're suggesting also, you know, when you take, you know, that particular group of devs, that really it has the upper hand, it has the network effects, and thus, you know, it's going to can maintain that as time moves on. What are your thoughts on this idea of DeFi sort of connected to Ethereum as opposed to being agnostic?
I mean, 100% it is now. And I think partially that's because Polkadot hadn't fully launched yet.
Okay.
So you know, you probably see both myself and potentially even the Mantra DAO official Twitter handle and some of our, you know, fans and promoters and advisors tweeting using the hashtag PolkaDeFi. So we're obviously big proponents of this. You know, at the moment, you know, Ethereum has DeFi by the neck a little bit,
and by the balls,
and by the balls.
Yep.
And it probably should. I mean, it should, right? You know, it's kind of built for it at the moment. It does have the network effect. It has a lot of development talent. But you also see there's a lot of development talent moving over to Substrate, to Parity, to Web3, to Polkadot. So we're excited about that. You also have a lot of projects which are going to benefit from having, you know, cross-chain interoperability with all different types of blockchains, such as, you know, Cosmos and Tendermint Core, you know, Solana, you know, a bunch of these other, Neo, for example. Yeah. So
sorry, Nia. I meant Nia as an N-E-A-R. Yeah.
Yeah. Also. So there's a lot of these that are coming out, which are, you know, going to be, I don't want to call them like ETH killers, you know, that's a little bit silly. Ethereum still has its place in the crypto world, and it will continue to have its place in the crypto world. But people are getting, you know, tired of waiting for ETH 2.0, at least some, you know, and there's other people who have their ideas about how to run, you know, their own kind of layer one solutions.
So what would you say, John, to those who say, oh, you know, there's layer two solutions coming? We see the likes of Scale, for example. We've seen the work that Seller's done, or we've seen the work that Matic's done. And Seller obviously has that sort of cross-chain element also working in the Web3 domain as well. But you do have that argument brought forth with roll-ups. You know, we see that with Vitalik's responses often, you know, post-Raiden. So are you feeling that, you know, in time, DeFi will simply become known as an agnostic term applied to, you know, this pluralistic sort of multi-chain approach of what blockchains can do in the more general sense right across the game?
I would say so, yes. I think so. I don't think it should be focused on any one particular chain. Of course, as the ecosystem becomes broader and grows, you know, there's going to be like communities within each internal camp, which are going to, you know, beat the drum and be, you know, maxis in one specific region or the other. I'm just by personality not a maximalist. for any specific type of thing.
Right.
I'm a big
And
fan of
that's,
Ethereum. I like Bitcoin. I like Polkadot.
and John, thank you for stating that, because here you are as a Polkadot ambassador, a Kusama ambassador, a Substrate ambassador, and yet you're willing to state that. And I think a lot of people in the dev space respect that, because maximalism, even in the Ethereum sort of dev space, does seem to be still that minority, perhaps. There's a lot of people who are willing to open up the dialogue and suggest that there's a lot more happenings, a lot more iteration, innovation, and just development right across sort of the exciting sphere of L1. Or well, L1s, as we should say. Now, let's get back to you. Now, digging deep into your features as Mantra DAO, there's quite a lot going on, from borrowing governance to staking, as you've referenced, to the pool, to lending, and an interesting reputation protocol as well. Let's discuss this, break down what you think are the really important features that need unpacking for the people to understand.
Sure. So I think the easiest place to start is staking. And I think there's a lot of, very solid staking validator projects out there, including many of the top exchanges, which are, doing staking as a service for their users. And for the average person, it probably makes sense. You can, you have assets on the exchange. You don't want to put them in a hard wallet. Might as well make some interest on it, earn some staking rewards. But I guess the one thing and the problem there is when you're on a centralized exchange, it is also a black box. We use that term to talk about banks, but exchanges, I've worked in them before. They are black boxes, right? So that is not something that we're super interested in kind of having that more centralized staking model. And we've kind of tokenized the staking by, again, adding those additional ohm rewards onto the various different POS chains that we're going to be validating for.
Okay.
Doing true on-chain staking, not just, send me your tokens and I'm going to give you a reward kind of thing.
And is that built in with Karma as well, your reputation protocol? Are the reward mechanisms built in with that?
Will be, yes. So again, Karma is I think Karma and the Mantra pool are our two biggest sleepers in the entire Mantra ecosystem. So Karma it started out as kind of like a gamified way to have people become, strong members of the community and, see themselves rise up the leaderboard and, do good actions for the community. We say we're community governed. And we also, want people to participate in that. So there's certain actions for Mantra DAO that are helpful, bringing in friends, staking home, voting and contributing to our governance process, taking out loans and paying them back on time. There's a lot of different financial ones. There's also more qualitative ones, that are like, supporting us and bringing in friends and things of that nature.
To grow the ego, right?
Grow the ecosystem, but they all have bearing on, the success of the project, right? So, we're still trying to figure out exactly what the scoring and ranking of all these things are, in order to assess, what are the most valuable components of how, we can ascertain more financial data about those individuals.
I see.
So to then be able to provide better services. So it's like, big data analytics that a lot of people are doing these kind of very crazy credit rating systems. And that's why you can do like flash loans on more traditional fintechs, because they're able to, see, when you're paying back your loans and what time you're looking up different types of credit reporting things. And there's all these like various different touch points that they can gather that they can then figure out, oh, this person is at a risk of default, or this person is more likely or more risky to not pay back their loan, for example.
So it's also data-driven as well, for those users of the credit union in a more, decentralized sense. But I did want to bring it back to that staking, because that seems to be like the sort of the heartbeat of maintaining that utility, really encouraging people also to utilize the broader system. So what's exactly the plan with regard to what you can stake, for example? Because not all tokens on your list are available first.
Correct. So currently you can validate or nominate, us with Kusama and Polkadot. So we'll be publishing reports and information on how you can delegate or nominate. In Polkadot language is nominate, but for some of the other chains is delegate your DOT and Kusama to us. And we'll then be, again, distributing your staking rewards to you. We'll launch with those two, but we have some pretty exciting projects that we're also talking to.
You're not going to tell me?
I can't, but I can give you some hints.
Okay.
So like I said, we're definitely very keen on supporting the Polkadot ecosystem. So there's a lot of projects upcoming that will then also have staking within their system. So just think of some of the pretty solid existing Polkadot projects, as well as some of the up and coming Polkadot projects.
And could you give us maybe hints of use case of any particular or vertical? Or would you dare?
Other Polkadot DeFi projects,
Well, I wonder ones like maybe Ocala as an example, things like that. Who knows?
We would love to support Ocala.
Or maybe Laminar, I mean, Centrifuge, I mean, there's so many.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe not too far off. So these are the types of projects that we would like to support on the Polkadot side. That being said, we're also, again, not a maximalist here. We're also supporters of Tentermint Core and Cosmos. So there's, I think there's probably like 3 or 4, like the crown jewels of Cosmos ecosystem that, we're looking at. And then there's also some smaller upcoming projects, which we would love to support as well.
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head there as well with up and coming, because a lot of people, they look for what's hot right now in the sort of crypto sphere in terms of release tokens, but you're also looking well ahead in terms of where you can align technologically, create these synergies for the use cases and for the utility. So that's interesting. Sure. I'd love to know more in, perhaps round 2 of these interviews.
Sure.
So staking's exciting. There's a lot happening there. What about, in terms of the pool itself? You referenced that. Let's understand a little bit more about how that works in the context of features too.
Sure. So again, a big portion of what we're doing now is actually purchasing and spinning up a lot of these validator nodes. So purchasing assets and spinning up these validator nodes underneath the foundation. So again, that would be Polkadot, Kusama, and a bunch of these other different chains that will then run validators with our own assets, as well as assets delegated or nominated to us from the community. One strategy that we're using is to work directly with the foundations in order to help secure support for the validators that we'll be running as well. So then obviously those do make money. They make interest and they make staking rewards for securing the network, right? So on a daily basis, we're making interest and staking rewards from, now it's just a couple chains, but in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, we'll have 20, 30, 40 different staking nodes up and running. That'll be incurring daily interest. And on a weekly basis with the Mantra pool, we'll take 25% of that interest and put it into this kind of like gamified system, the Mantra pool, where users can access it, one, through their karma score. So if you have a high enough karma score, you get immediate access, maybe like 5 or 10 tickets or whatever the number is going to be. It's not set in stone just yet. So they'll have immediate access to every pool if they're doing well within the system, or you can burn our OM, where right now we had it as one OM is an entry, but seeing what's happening with the price, we might have to adjust that.
I did read the burning information, so if anyone wants to know more, you can there. But what is interesting, you often say in this interview, we're still working on certain parts, and that is just part and parcel with the process, I suppose, of iterating. Nothing is static. So how are you coping with the influx of interest? This sudden attention on what is now a release token for users in this scenario, including the pool, as you mentioned.
I mean, it's great. I mean, we're just honestly flabbergasted is probably the word with how much interest we've received. I mean, it's been crazy. We're very happy with how the community's responded to our project. And we're looking to capitalize on this momentum. I think we're in the midst of a DeFi bull market for sure. But I've been in the space long enough to know that these things don't last forever.
No, they don't.
And nor should they, right? So I think I personally believe we're on the earlier side of this, which is good. I think there's still a lot of room to go, but I do see resemblances to 2017 of money grabs and things of that nature. That being said,
let me jump in, because people know I like to be really upfront, direct about these. Now, you do see a lot of shit coins out there. You do see a lot of price pushing. You see lots of crazy antics going on, and people want to know what is the difference between shit and legit. So what gives people that peace of mind when it comes to Mantra about knowing that, these aren't just a bunch of buzzwords that you and I are talking about, but you're actually with a team and you're building something real when we bring it down to these features in the context of a token? This is important because it's not just a token that people can go and bet on through speculative means, but you're saying that these have real deal purposes. You're looking towards something long and true into the future.
Sure. I mean, again, as a big believer in proof of stake blockchains, proof of work is also awesome, but to be just, I believe in it, so I think it's going to be successful long term. I think there's a reason for this consensus mechanism, and I think that it's clearly shown that there's a viable business model here that's replicable in a more traditional sense, which is like the savings side of things. So we've created this, product which is taking a new technology but using an existing business model to represent that, right? And so I think that's one thing that is a validation for what we're doing. We're not reinventing the wheel on the business model here. I think we're just improving it by using blockchain, proof of stake, blockchains, and other kind of permissionless technologies in order to facilitate a better system. Also with the governance side. And then I think also, one other validator and validation is that, we've had significant institutional interest in our project, as well as, we work again very closely with Web3 and Parity. And,
okay. Now I'm going to jump in there. Now, the fact that we'll talk about the federated nature of some of the underpinning technology, that also directly aligns to enterprise. We've seen the likes, for example, with Ethereum and their enterprise alliance. We've seen Baseline emerge for them. Consensus is entirely, all about trying to bridge the gap. That's what you're alluding to right now. You're suggesting that the focus is also bridging the gap for mainstream entries into, this DeFi world. And I'm also, guessing that you've got a pipeline, of connections there or of potential movers into the space and into Mantra.
Correct. Yes.
But you're not going to tell me.
Without, I'm not sure if I can announce the one specific thing, but when is this coming out?
I'll put it out tomorrow. But the point, I think what's important, for transparency, we don't want to create FOMO where it's not warranted. But the fact that you're holding back, that's also good for us to know as well, John, because this is part of the professional process. You don't do things to, get everyone FOMOing it, for the next big buzz. You're already.
If I could share it myself, I would. But obviously, when you're working with pretty significant partners, they have their own process and their own timelines, and you need to make sure that they have approvals on things that you're saying. So we respect that.
Sure. Now, I appreciate obviously this discussion about, trying to explain or explicate your position as someone who wants to advocate for the long term. We talk about HODL in the space, and we've also seen the likes of many, the startups in the past from 2017 essentially die. And that's why I ask you these tough questions, because we want to see that doesn't happen to you. We want to know that, you're working with a team that's really driven to push past this, and the tokenomics, all of the things we're going to talk about today have to also correlate. Now,
100%.
Let's discuss a little bit more about, I guess, how the voting works in the governance, because we want to make sure that the people truly do have, a voice with the design.
Yes. Yeah. So when we were looking at the governance model that we created, one, we've designed it so essentially if it's not good, we can change it. And two, we've kind of looked at a lot of the existing ones out there and tried to pinpoint what worked and what didn't work. And we found that one thing that didn't work was, one, people just didn't vote because either it was difficult for them, they didn't understand how to do it, or it was just inaccessible. Some of the existing governance tokens, you need to have a substantial portion of them to be able to actually participate in the governance. If you need 1 million of our token to do that, that's probably a problem for us, because we want everyone to have a voice if they so choose. So the way that we've actually designed the structure of our Mantra DAO Foundation is that actually, as a token holder, you are the beneficiary of the foundation. So all token holders of Ohm have a pro rata, stake in the Mantra DAO Foundation. So God forbid if Mantra DAO Foundation, shut down or the project became a failure, all of the assets that the foundation would hold, which, are the Ohm tokens themselves, which are all
go to the stakers,
would go to the people who are the token holders, essentially.
And that's cool, because also what's happening in this situation is we are reconceptualizing what staking means in terms of value, because we conceptualize it as a utility value. And yet traditionally, that would have been a security. So it's interesting to see how you had this whole redesign of semantics built into blockchain. when it comes to
Yes.
finance.
Exactly. And, to go back also to the kind of like the question about the voting and whatnot that you mentioned, for us, all it takes is to be one of those stakers to vote. So if you stake 1 ohm, you have 1 vote essentially, and you have to stake them to vote to, show commitment to the project. But again, it just takes 1. We want to be as democratic as possible. And also why we are, staking is a key piece of our tokenomic model. We've designed it so that nearly 30% or a third of our tokens are going to the stakers through staking rewards, not only of Ohm token, but also DOT, Kusama, X token, X token, X token, X token.
Right. Yeah, there's a few lists, and I'm going to mention some because I found some information about that was available publicly. But what's also interesting is that's the largest percentage of all of the token allocations in your tokenomics. I think that's really important because once again, it comes back to the people, giving them access.
100%.
Okay. Now, are there any other things in those features before we move on that you wanted to address that perhaps we didn't touch on that you think really?
Yeah. So for the governance, I'll just kind of, the voting process, I'll just really quickly run through. So essentially, we do have to have some semblance of a barrier to be able to take part in the on-chain governance. So we've made it so that you need to put up $100 of Ohm to be able to at least propose a vote. So so you don't overflood us with unreasonable requests or proposals.
Okay.
And if you and that's actually not even that much, so it's definitely possible to get through. I've seen other projects with much higher barriers, but we want to have anyone be able to propose something. So you propose it, and if your proposal gets past the evaluation phase, then which the evaluation is done by the council, then it'll go to a community vote, and that's where everyone has a say in the voting process. The process will be 1 week proposals, 1 week evaluation, 1 week voting, and 1 week implementation. So the whole thing runs 12 times a year, and it runs 1 week at a time for the entire course of the year. And this will happen once we launch our mainnet. So for the ERC20 version that we have out now, there's no community on-chain governance. Essentially, we're still, we obviously have taken a lot of feedback from the community on how to do things. We are community focused, and that's why, much to the chagrin of my friends and family, I'm in the Telegram group a lot, talking with the community, hearing their feedback, because they're very important for us now and down the line.
Right. And John, I want to ask you a tough question. I think this is perhaps something that other people have asked you, I'd imagine. Why did you not wait until the mainnet to essentially release the token? Why do it now in this ER20 sort of almost test-like phase, especially when, there's a few things that you're working on right now as you build towards mainnet?
Sure. I think part of it, I've been in the space long enough to know that timing is everything. Right now is good timing. And we really wanted to, we had even internal discussions about this, about when we should launch the token.
Okay.
Because obviously we did our fundraise. And it actually goes to show how we really did kind of almost rush the token, because we did SAFTs for everyone. SAFTs are normally used for institutional and more private investors. Okay. We did an individual SAFT, which is a simple,
very important
for future tokens.
I think for
everyone.
Proof of those parties that have invested prior to the listing.
We did that for everyone. So we did 1,000 SAFs for the sale, and we made it even more because we capped all the public rounds at 5,000 per person. So we had so many SAFs, even for anyone as small as $100, we did SAFs.
Okay, so that must have frustrated some of the parties who really wanted to throw their dollars in, let's say, to really try and get as much as they could if they really believed in you. I love the fact that you've capped this because, and we'll talk about that later, but I really like the idea of having maximized the number of participants in that scenario, because really it's espousing that philosophy of DeFi right down 100%. To private sale access. Okay, so continue on. This is really interesting learning about this.
Again, we did all these individual SAFs for everyone, right? And that was a very manual process. And we did it to give them security that, God forbid anything happened, they would still get, either the tokens or the money back. So we obviously felt very strongly in that regard. We didn't do a token smart contract because of that. Because, again, we thought we were just going to launch and then wait. But then we realized very quickly that timing is really, really good right now. And, we wanted to also launch on the same day as DOT transferability, which was yesterday. Right. So
which will be a day later perhaps when this comes out. But exciting times because everyone's been waiting for DOT to unveil.
Big time. So we wanted to align ourselves as much as possible with that. The night before, I was like up all night. You know, we were really like pushing it as hard as we could to get all these SAFTs reconciled. I mean, I think I slept 2 hours before launch, maybe even a little less, just because we were still literally going through one by one through the 1,000 different wallet addresses and making sure that, you know, everyone had the proper amount of tokens, that we didn't, you know, duplicate, you know, transaction.
It's a lot of pressure. Wallets. It's a lot of pressure in the time frame. So really what you're saying is you're capitalizing on an opportune time, given that Polkadot, you know, DOT's release, you know, moving well past the IEO now into that live scenario. You wanted to capture, I suppose, part of the network effects as well. So it makes a lot of sense, and thanks for being transparent about that. I can see in an ideal scenario, though, it would have been great to wait for that mainnet, you know, release, but you didn't for these reasons.
Yes, and I guess just the one other thing I'll add is, you know, we are still offering staking of the Ohm token to just kind of set in people's minds that staking is a key part of us. So we can't do that with the ERC20, obviously, but we can have like the pre-staking opportunities on some of our exchange partners. So currently on BitThumb Global, you can do a pre-staking arrangement, and there'll be another exchange coming next week, which has a pretty cool pre-staking as well.
Right. Okay. That's rare to say from someone like you. So you've got another exchange coming. You've already got 3. You've got Polonia.
We have a lot more coming.
Yeah, you got a lot more coming. Okay. And you're not going to tell me who. But I think a lot of people...
keep getting surprise listed, actually. People are just listing us. We're not even asking for it.
That's the beauty of DeFi as well, you know, because we see the DEXs as well coming through. But in terms of centralized exchanges, I also anticipate releases there. I think you know more than you're not telling me.
Maybe a little bit.
Maybe
we do have some upcoming DEXs as well, though. I think that's
great because DEXs is also part of this space right now. It allows for more access as well. We can bypass some of the, you know, the challenges as well with DEXs.
We're very excited about the launching of Polkadex and PokaSwap down the line. So that's not a hint, or I'm not. We have not talked to them.
It's already very popular. A lot of people are talking about that. So you know, in a matter of time, that will happen, as you clearly are alluding to. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you, given we're talking about a lot of these sort of products and technologies that are directly aligned with Polkadot and the substrate, and also given we've talked about DeFi, are you also going to do some cross-chain work, or are you going to work more in the with Ethereum? Because we've also talked about Cosmos. Are you looking at Ethereum as well and acknowledging that they, once again, do, you know, have potential to work with you?
100%. There's a very, very cool project out within the Polkadot ecosystem that's kind of building that bridge. Moonbeam.
I know Moonbeam. I know Derek. I haven't released the interview yet. My bad.
So we're very big fans of that project, and there's nothing official yet or anything like that. But I think that's going to be massive. The way they design it with Truffle, to, you know, they know ETH devs clearly. It's
going to be massive. And what about Edgeware? You know, we talked about some of
Edgeware also,
you know, with the smart contract, but particularly the smart contract cross-chain capability of Moonbeam. I don't think people know what's coming.
No, I mean, it's huge. We want to support that project. I can say that.
All right. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit more about some of the phases that are referenced in the literature about you. Maybe a bit old, so we need to update this. But in terms of lending to third-party lending across to open proprietary lending algorithms, what does all that mean in terms of phases?
Sure. So actually, in terms of phases, I mean, to be honest, we can probably throw those out the window at this point.
Okay.
We're gonna develop all of it in parallel to a certain degree, but we're going to launch things that we think are most important. So, you know, to a certain degree, I think that our proprietary lending is most important. But at the same time, we also are fans of the Ethereum community and Ethereum in general. So having the ability to interface with Compound, or I call it Aave, but I think it's Aave.
I think it's Aave. A lot of people say
Is it Aave?
I think it is. That's what I call it too. I mean, we might be both wrong. That's okay.
I like Aave better. With Aave, and other, you know, kind of Ethereum lending protocols, we want to be able to have that directly on the Mantra DAO platform as well, and still be able to kind of liquidity mine Ohm. So
what's your relationship like with some of these executives, some of these CEOs of these startups and big names like Compound, for example. Do you regularly talk with them, or are
I've
they
never
showing
talked to
interest?
I've never talked to Robert. I'd be happy to, but we have been talking to Compound before.
That's great, because it means that they are not closed-minded about collaborations with technologies like you that are clearly in the Polkadot camp initially.
Yeah. So we've been working with Compound in the early stages. One of our advisors, ProfK, which I think he's close with Stan over at Aave.
He's a great guy.
I mean,
very
Stan
connected.
or ProfK or both?
ProfK, very connected.
ProfK
is really helpful.
ProfK is a legend. He's a legend. He's a legend.
Well, that's good to know.
One of my good friends.
Well, it's great to know that not only do you have that strong sort of advisory support that have sort of their fingers in many pies, and are connected across the board, but it's great to also see that you're thinking ahead professionally in the context of collaboration with a lot of these big players. Ethereum, again, is still that lead player that in the L1 scenario. So kudos to you for making sure that you, again, can connect with the right people in the right place.
For sure.
Because people will want to know that, especially those that are in the ETH camp now wondering whether or not, DeFi is just for Ethereum, or is it actually something bigger?
For sure. No, I mean, I think we see it from multiple angles. One, obviously in our opinion, it's a smart business decision to be able to do that. But it also has, network effects that can be brought into us. Obviously there's a big camp over there. And if we can, win over a couple of those people to come check out our platform, people own lots of different types of assets, not just Ethereum. So, there might be some ETH heads who also own, some DOT, or who might also, and they can come stake that with us, right? And they can liquidity mine Ohm, and, then they'll also be able to, lend their Ethereum assets on our platform. So it's a nice, kind of push-pull.
Right. And as you know as well, John, even those in those small minority maximalist camps, whether that be in the BTC community, they're not probably minority, they're probably a majority. But then you go across the dev community and you have that group of people who are the dev maxis there, or the ETH maxis. Even then, we don't know if they are, again, investing, experimenting with other ecosystems. We don't know, because it's not always done what's said. So it's exciting just to see an overall picture of how things are moving in the space. Now, one of the things that we do need to discuss is the team, because I did have a look, not a huge team, it does seem, and correct me if I'm wrong, and you're hiring. That's good to know. Now you've got yourself, Will, Rodrigo, please help me with some of the pronunciations. You've got Stacey, is it Firex? Firex, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Billy, Harrison, and the list goes on. You've also got the council. Now, a lot of them are entrepreneurs. A lot of them are focused on that sort of business aspect. What I want to know is how many of them have that real ability to build this, to, when it comes to technology, when it comes to making sure that the DAO is maintained properly and securely, not just build the business.
Yeah, so we actually have been working very closely with the Rio side, particularly on the technical development of the project. So Jamie Chung, who's the CTO of RioDeFi, has been helping a lot on this project, actually. We have, I can't make any, again, confirmations of names or anything like that, but we have some pretty solid devs and engineers coming on board in the near future, who are going to also help maintain the kind of development core of just Mantra. So while we are integrating a lot of these things with the RioChain and with RioDeFi, we also want to have a core team that just focuses on Mantra as well. So a lot of the tech guys we've left off the website, just because, to be completely frank and honest, a lot of them are based in China. So our teams are between Hong Kong and Shanghai. And, obviously we were doing a fairly public token offering.
I see.
So
you don't need this anymore. I think people can understand entirely if they understand the drama that has unfolded in China. Okay, so that explains.
So there's that. Yeah, there's that part. But then, we also actually, this is a bit of a shout out to Felix, who's kind of our GM of China. He's, been working with blockchain projects, building them, managing project teams on the technical side as well. So, we have a team in Hong Kong, which is mainly the kind of the council and kind of the operational team. And then we also have like kind of an operational team in Shanghai as well. So those are our two kind of key HQs.
Very good to know. And thanks for that transparency for what isn't on the website. That gives us more confidence. Obviously, I'd like to know a bit more about their credentials, but it's good to hear from you. That's why we do these interviews, John. Now, one of the things I actually wanted to ask you was, recently, Larry from the block, he was moderating, I think, a panel, and one of the topics that come up was East versus West when it comes to blockchain, when it comes to startups. Now, I haven't listened to that, but I thought it was a great sort of segue right now for us, because you are, have a strong presence in Asia, with Hong Kong and China, the devs there, the real buzz is actually, perhaps a blockchain is really happening in the Asian space. Now, definitely. What are your thoughts on this sort of dichotomy between East and West? Should we even be discussing that in the context of blockchain when we see places like Berlin doing their own thing, doing amazing things over there with Parity as well? Are we getting it wrong by, separating and creating borders?
I don't necessarily think it's wrong, because it just is the different. I mean, there's cultural differences. I'm from the West, spent a lot of time in the East, spent a lot of time in Europe, but from the US. So, I've kind of lived all over the place, and I understand that there are cultural differences about how people work, how they operate, how they do business. And, a big part of that is seen in blockchain as well. I mean, the Chinese blockchain space is very different than, anything in the West. It just is.
But what about in the context of DeFi though, John? If we're talking about teams that are global, how does that fit in with Mantra DAO, for example?
I think that's something, I think it's good. I mean, just maybe a little bit of a kind of funny anecdote is we originally were, thinking, the only way we're going to be able to get this off the ground is if we have support from China. And, in the beginning, I think people in China were like, what the hell is this? These are just a bunch of paid white guys on the council who are literally, they thought we were actors.
Okay.
and we're like, oh, we need to maybe reassess this strategy. And ended up, the vast majority of our participation and support has started out in places outside of China. And now that we have become a fairly reputable project, at least hype-wise, we need to build a lot, but in terms of hype, we're, reputable. People know us. It's working better in that we're like re-entering as a foreign project, because, now people do see us as, something that has roots there, but also is, successful in other places.
Okay. So how are you seen outside of the East, do you think now? As I mentioned, Larry has strong views, or especially those who are in the media in the West when it comes to crypto, or those associated with exchanges like Coinbase, for example, or Messari, and strong views and a lot of support happening for innovation in the West from them. So, and there's sometimes a lot of criticism about certain exchanges, if you know what I mean. So what are your thoughts with regard to the sentiment from these parties when it comes to Mantra?
No, so, well, I don't know. I don't know if they've been specifically saying anything about us, but
well, just in the context of, you being in the Asian space, not you specifically, but when we see a lot of this support for pro-Western development, pro-Western innovation from those sources, how do you feel? Do you feel supported by the broader West?
I think so. I mean, we had a lot of people coming from Europe and from, well, obviously not the US, but we had, they couldn't get in, but now they can.
Right.
But we had a lot of people coming from Europe, and, received a lot of, solid reception from that part of the world so far. We are also firm believers in transparency regarding the project. So, working with someone like Messari is something we're definitely interested in.
Okay.
They have a, I mean, that I can say. I mean, we're definitely actively looking
Brian would be happy, that you're talking about that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is another shout out to ProfK, but I mean, he and another friend of ours, Dan Liebau from Lightbulb Capital, he's based in Singapore. They wrote a published academic article and journal about, transparency regarding token offerings. So, that is something that's, and just a shout out to Rodrigo, our other council member. I mean, he's the most this needs to be, buy the book as transparent as possible.
Okay.
So this is super important for us. We need to make sure that people are aware of, how we're doing things, and that we're not, screwing over anyone, and that we're not pulling fast moves.
That's what we want to hear. We want to hear also that you're taking regulation and compliance seriously.
100%. I mean, extremely important. Obviously we're working with, legal counsels to make sure everything we're doing is by the book. That's why we did the SAFT situation. So it's an important thing for us. And back in 2017, 2018, you probably got away with not doing things super transparently and allowing, people to, like they call it in China, cutting the leaks, where, you get the early investors in at a discount, and you don't lock them up and they just dump on the retail
Well,
guys.
we've seen that. Let's be real. We've seen that happen not only in Wall Street or in sort of the Chinese version of that. We've seen that in crypto. I myself,
100%.
as someone who's invested, in 2017 in that scenarios, absolutely there were scenarios where there were unlocked opportunities for those early investors. So once again, I didn't want to talk about this until later, but that vesting schedule is imperative for trust. 100%. In a trustless sort of technology, we need to know that those people are well and truly locked up and not going to dump on those as they experiment with the speculative value of the utility token.
100%.
So great to know. Now, I want to go back to the RioChain because that is technology that you're using. That is technology that is directly correlated with the substrate when it comes to the proof of authority. So can you teach us a bit more about that in terms of permissioned, its design and federated structure, federated chain, why it's done, how that connects with enterprise?
Yeah, so currently RioChain is a proof of authority POA blockchain with a very fast track to move to proof of stake. So without talking too much about the upcoming sale that they're doing, that is purely to distribute the tokens to have a larger decentralized network of holders of the Rio Fuel token. I don't know the exact economics behind what it's going to take to run a validator for RioChain. Obviously, Mantra DAO will be running it, at least in the beginning. So we're one of the key dApps that's kind of started potentially building a lot of interest for RioChain and RioDeFi. So we're, obviously very excited about that. We, support each other, just kind of like, Web3 supports Polkadot kind of thing.
Well, the team also, there's a lot of overlap as well.
A lot of overlap for sure. And again, we're based in Hong Kong. RioDeFi is based in Hong Kong, also Shanghai. So there's again lots of crossover in that regard. Yep. But yeah, so right now it's starting at a proof of authority. To be completely honest, it is fairly centralized at the moment, which is also why, which is federated, and that's also why we want to. We don't want to launch on something that's so centralized with it for Mantra. So that's part of the reason why there is a bit of
okay. So really, that's why you're hinting at this fast track, because the mainnet's going to correlate with the proof of stake.
Close.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, though.
So RioDeFi is moving very quickly towards that, and that's kind of the plan for RioChain. With Mantra, right now it's just not RioChain is not a decentralized layer one solution. So we wanted to move more towards something that's more decentralized. Actually, RioChain is ready to launch now if we wanted it to. We could launch on RioChain now. Okay,
and that's what I wanted to get to, because if I'm someone who is perhaps trying to assess the value of Mantra DAO, especially let's say where I'm a speculator, even in that when I'm doing my research, I want to know that RioChain is legit. I want to know that I can go and check into it. I can look into their code, or I can look. Tough to do in a permission federated scenario, but obviously not that many people know about RioChain. And I've read the white paper myself. It's not not a tough read. You can easily do it. Anyone can access it. But what about the verification process? How can we sort of trust in the tech that underpins, I guess, what you're building with your application?
Yeah. So I think one of the kind of the critical elements of what RioChain is going to be bringing to the table is the generic asset gateway that they've been working on, and it's a key part of what will allow Mantra DAO to do this kind of multi-asset cross-chain staking and lending, integrating Cosmos and Tentermint Core and Ethereum and Bitcoin blockchains and all these other things. So that's one thing that will be 100% open source in the future for various reasons. Including kind of working on some Web3 things. we can't have that code public just yet.
Okay. Like Moonbeam.
Well,
maybe.
Again, So, but these types of things are and will be 100% open source and open to the public.
Okay. Now, what's interesting also is that some of those buzzwords we hear thrown around apply to you guys through the connection with RioChain, and that's compatibility, connectivity, interoperability. You're not telling me, everything, because you can't, but the interoperability is clear with cross chains. Then there's the wallet. Is that done now?
Phase 1, yes.
Okay, so that's the connectivity, and then you have that compatibility with Substrate and the Parity elements. That's all sort of tied up nicely. I guess the exciting thing will be also how this plays out with the interoperability and the fees. Because one of the things that we've seen recently is the high fees that Ethereum has had to sort of cope with the influx in demand. Yes.
So actually, that's one of the kind of the critical, let's call it, flaws at the moment with Ethereum, particularly for DeFi. I mean, all my buddies are trying to buy Mantra on Uniswap, and half the time they can't even get the transaction to go through. I mean, we had crazy volume on Uniswap yesterday and today, actually.
Yeah, and tomorrow probably.
And I mean, I think we were over 10% of all volume on Uniswap yesterday, something like that at the peak, which is awesome.
That's huge.
Huge. I mean, we're big fans of Uniswap and all those Ethereum dexes, actually. Shout out to Balancer and Curve and the like. For us though, with RioChain, it does allow us to have much cheaper fee structures. I mean, I think it's 1/10 of an R fuel can be a transaction on the network, and that equates to like 10 cents or something like that.
Right. And John, surely that's a game changer in itself when it comes to people sort of grappling with the expense of simply making transactions and then making swaps. This is going to be something that people are going to move to because they just don't want to pay those high fees.
I think the two biggest, well, maybe three biggest things that we're trying to solve with Mantra DAO for DeFi is, one, those fees. Two, like easy to use. Ease of use is extremely important. A lot of the DeFi, to do all the yield farming and liquidity mining and things of that nature.
Pretty
for a lot
complex.
of people is pretty complex. Yes. So that's one thing. So easy to use interface, very simple to just, okay, this is my staking, this is my lending, this is my stake and lend, this is my borrow. We have all these different functions. This is my Mantra pool. So easy to use, simple. And then the other part is kind of like fiat integrations on and off. So that are cheap.
Okay.
So there's, for DeFi to become big, you're going to need new capital to come into the space. And normally it starts coming in at, the top. Comes in at Bitcoin, maybe some trickles down. We want to be able to have it directly injected into Mantra, directly into Ohm, directly into DeFi, so people can purchase, Ohm with, a credit card or debit card or a bank transfer directly on Mantra.
Hence those fiat gateways in. Now, what about the UI? Because you need that for the web, you need that for the mobile. You need to be ready. If you want to have this kind of network effects and you want to have all of this sort of money flow from mainstream in, and obviously you need to have good and functional UI for that. Where is everything at?
We've released a couple like simple screenshots, I think, that are floating around, which our team, led mainly by Will and Billy and one of our other tech guys on the website, Robbie, have been doing a great job on the UI UX so far. So the front end is all done, actually, and actually I'm pretty sure we're going to be launching not a usable, but not a non-static front end that people can go play around with and see how it works, which is pretty cool.
That's coming. Okay, so that's coming in the next few weeks, I would imagine, because
I think we'll actually be able to show it's not connected to a back-end blockchain or anything like that, but we'll be able to show the kind of the click-through for some of our users, like particularly the key community members who are going to test out and see the flow. But actually, like clicking on the different functions and seeing how they would work in real life.
Okay.
Soon. Yeah.
That's good to know, because we want to see more of this sort of empirical proof that, these things are happening and they're emerging and being released. Now, one of the things that is giving me peace of mind is that you do have audited processor through Certik or Certik. They're one of the leaders, I would imagine, in the space, known them right from the beginning, actually, that team. also a lot of sort of professors and strong contingent of Chinese participants in that. What does it mean to make sure to have those audits built in?
I mean, it's extremely important, right? One of the biggest, like I think we were talking earlier, like I've done 25 AMAs or 30 AMAs in the last 3 weeks. One of the biggest questions we're always getting is, I mean, yeah, it's been crazy, but one of the biggest questions is, are you going to get hacked? How can I ensure that it's safe? People are launching DeFi projects. Some of them are, have the risk warnings, unaudited code. Trade at your own risk. But for us, that's not the path that we're going. So we need to make sure that anything that we launch is going to be properly audited, properly safe for users to, make sure that they don't have a flash loan that gets, the loophole in the flash loan algorithm gets crashed or hacked, and the whole thing gets wiped out.
Yeah, we've seen that too many times in the beginning.
Too many times.
Yeah.
And I guess the unfortunate part is, it seems like these types of things happen all the time and people just don't care.
Well, we're seeing that with the examples we saw recently, with unaudited code, unaudited experimentations when it comes to yield farming, for example. People are willing to take that bet even when it's clearly stated by, those code designers that a lot of the inherent value is not in the actual token itself. So people are willing to, gamble on high risk unaudited scenarios.
I mean, 100%. I think the YAMS experiment was actually awesome. It was very cool, but I don't necessarily
cool and crazy.
Cool and crazy. I don't necessarily want to replicate that with our project, though.
I don't think you will be with those audits built in. Now, let's discuss use cases, because no point to any of this if you haven't got a purpose built in. It's reference things like banks, e-commerce, lending, remittance as key verticals to address or to work with. Give us a bit of a sort of sense of the kind of scope, because you won't tell us the names, but tell us how this can be applied in the real world.
From the Rio side or the Mantra side?
Give us anything you want to say.
Okay. So for Mantra at the beginning, it's pretty clearly financial at the moment. Financial and kind of like ownership and governance use cases for our token, at least. On the Rio side, they have a lot of cool stuff coming, which is not just financial services related. They have some pretty cool games coming out, both kind of more on the betting, but as well as the sports and all kinds of other things.
The popular ones.
Popular ones. We have some pretty I'm an advisor for Rio, so I can speak a little bit on this stuff. But also have some kind of regulated exchanges that are going to be coming up as well within the Rio ecosystem, which will allow for fiat cross-border transfers and settlement. So for remittances as well, so that's a big one.
Okay, so that addresses a lot of that banking, lending to e-commerce, those allusions to the the gamification, I guess. But I want to ask you this: what is the benefit of the growth of the Rio eco for Mantra? How is that going to be correlating to help you?
So one, anything that can be built on RioChain, could theoretically have their assets included in the Mantra DAO platform. From a valid. If we like if the community likes it.
Okay.
So again, going back to the community, right now we have a plan on which validators that we want to include. These are top projects. These are up and coming ones that we think are very exciting, and which we think are becoming a Genesis validator for them will be long-term financially beneficial for the project, right? And that's all well and good, but we also want to have community feedback. And if someone thinks that we should include one of these projects, and they can propose it, and we can vote on it, and we can include these types of things in our services.
Right. And what's interesting too also is that RioChain are hosting others, not just you as well,
Correct.
like Bitpool, KOJ. So they are busy building, but I wanted to make sure that from you we could get more understanding of the legitimacy of that underpinning, because without that you're nothing. Because you do have to have that tech premise, because you are an application. You're not your own blockchain.
Sure.
Now, what about stablecoins and derivative tokens? These are massively important, I would imagine, to your design when it comes to, compatibility with the broad suite of tokens. and also just with the innovations that are coming for derivatives.
Yes. So for us, the kind of derivative element is very clearly tied into our like liquid staking or tokenized staking. So the one key, I don't want to call it a flaw, but the one key issue that we see with POS blockchains is that you potentially have network security at risk if the yield on those assets is greater somewhere else rather than securing the network itself. So let's say I'm staking let's just use DOT as an example. I'm staking my DOT and making 20% APR.
Yep.
That's where it kind of started at the peak. But I can, I have a trade, or I have something on leverage, or I have, some other kind of lending product out there that's offering me 25%. As an investor, rational investor, where are you going to take your DOT? You're going to take it to 25% and potentially put the asset or network at risk. So what we've created, and I think some other projects are doing this as well, including Akala, including Staffy, including like Staker DAO, is that you can actually tokenize the Staker DAO is a cool project as well.
Very
I
cool.
like those guys. Yes. And we share similar investors with some of those projects.
Yeah, I've connected with them before. They are very cool.
Very cool. And so, you can tokenize those staked assets to be able to trade them, to be able to sell them, to be able to lend or borrow against them, but still maintaining the staked asset, providing network security. So in our situation, like let's use DOT as an example, you can tokenize the DOT that's staked. In that case, you actually do have to bond it to us. We need to take control of that asset in order to, ensure that you're not going to just unbond it and, take a tokenized version of it and then run with both.
Yeah. So there's a collateral element to it.
There's a collateral element on that side because it does it is a bit of a complex product.
Okay.
But you bond those to us essentially, and then you create the Ohm DOT, or what we're calling Ohm DOT. So that's like the tokenized version of it. And with that Ohm DOT, there could be a market for it that you could potentially trade it on a DEX if you wanted to sell it. Of course, if you wanted to get back your original DOT, you have to return it or wind up the contract. But you could use it as collateral to borrow against. And this is the kind of concept that we've come up with Professor K particularly, which is the DeFi flywheel, which is where you take your tokenized Ohm DOT and you use it as collateral to borrow USD Ohm, which is the stable coin, which then you can use to buy more DOT.
Yes, and that's what's interesting. Yeah, it seems to like this interconnection between the two is kind of the point that you're making. You can't have one without the other. And we've also seen the likes, for example, of Synthetics and many other platforms in the Ethereum world. They also, we start to see them with their own synthetic tokens, a suite of them. I assume that's what's going to happen with you guys as well.
Definitely. So, I mean, we're starting, like we use the example of Ohm DOT first, but essentially the tokenized version of the asset could be with any asset that we're putting on the platform. So just think of the validators that we'll be having, and you could have an Ohm version of it.
Well, things like, for example, EOS, ADA, KSM, BTC, a lot of these are interconnected with your stablecoin as well in terms of compatibility. That needs to be discussed right now, John, because Ethereum, from my understanding, are not that broad in their compatibility. With you guys, because of the connection you have with the substrate, with the technology as well, it's not just like that one sort of DAI related connection that you see with the stablecoins. The stablecoin there, this is quite diverse.
100%. I mean, I think we've designed our platform, similar to our views on maximalism. Okay. We think there's a lot of, and that's also part of the community element because, we want to support communities of various different backgrounds and opinions and ideas about stuff. So, we want to support high quality assets that, fit into our platform and fit into our kind of long-term roadmap. And the community can decide if they like them or not.
Got it. Now, in terms of GitHub access, obviously when mainnet happens, things will change there, especially with the transition at some point after that. I would imagine with the proof of stake. When will the average person be able to just, go and tinker, play, experiment, develop?
Without setting too much of a timeline, probably, similar to around our mainnet launch, I would say. Maybe quicker on certain elements. Again, we're trying to be fairly transparent with, at least with like showing a lot of the stuff that we're working on the front end side. But there's a lot of stuff on the back end that we also are trying to figure out because we're working with tons of various different blockchains.
Tons is a
tying
lot,
in.
John. So it sounds like between now and mainnet, you're going to have a lot of releases of information.
Oh, good. Yeah. I mean, like,
I'm surprised we even had time to even talk in this interview for so long. So, we'll leave it there with terms of releases we can just expect from,
a lot.
Now, the tokenomics. Let's get down to business about this. We talked about the staking, 30% roughly of the overall supply. You have an interesting number, very much related to the Chinese of 888 several times over. So you have 888 million essentially as the total supply. It goes on, all the eights right through, all the eights, luck's built in. But let's discuss it all the way down to the public sale. Now, interestingly and not surprisingly, you have the 8.5%, the lower percentage for the public sale. But you have a lot of things built in. What I wanted to focus on more so is sort of the transparency here of the tokenomics. So take it away,
Sure.
Give the full picture.
Sure. So we sold the private sale round, which was about 9%, at 0.25 cents, which those all include a lockup of 6 months with a monthly vesting schedule, with the first tranche being released on day one. So they've already had about 13 million tokens released. And a lot of
Lucky
people...
them. Let's stop there for a sec. So why did you let them unlock from the beginning?
To be honest, I guess in the beginning, it was just because the first investor that we had come on board, they were, we actually had the lockup at a little bit longer, and we had our own internal time. This is being completely transparent. We had our own internal time schedule, and things were taking a little longer than we wanted. So we needed to get some momentum.
Okay.
So we were willing to kind of, I don't want to say fold or cave or anything like that, but, we felt that we had enough of an incentive
to compromise
and push to compromise. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because we have such a solid staking program as well, we didn't see a dump yesterday.
So you have those offset measures. That's what we need to get into, because
Yes.
I was worried. I know I don't own any tokens. I told you that, told the people, but I was worried that from the beginning of the release, there would be a dump, a significant one, because, in the pre-research, I could see that there was a lot, potential risk there.
Yeah. I mean, so we had a lot of tokens come on. That was actually probably the biggest thing people were worried about in the community. Well, some of the people, partially because I think they wanted us to have a lower market cap to start, which was we started around 7 million. I think
you're well and truly above that now.
Yeah.
I think you're around 50, aren't you?
I think we hit an all-time high of 55 something this morning.
Well, by the time we release this, forget those numbers.
Yeah. But anyway, so people were definitely worried, and again, we kind of offset that with a very solid staking program, and just like we capped the public rounds, so we did have a significant amount of buying pressure of people who could not get into any of the rounds at the end of the day. So I think our biggest our true hype started after the sale was closed.
Yeah, and that's understandable. So, when we're talking about that private sale, that's only 9%. Now, that's not a huge percentage. And they unlock from day one. Are they all the same?
They unlock 1/6 at day one, and then 1/6 day 31, and then all the way up to day 151.
Yeah. Okay. So talk us through that. So, because there's different setups for the team, for example. I think that's over a 2 years vesting schedule, isn't it?
Yes. So team, we have a cliff of 6 months before anything gets unlocked.
Okay.
And then it's like 1/18 for the next 18 months for 2 years.
Oh, I didn't know that, because I thought initially it was 1/24th, so it was right from day one. So that's changed.
Yeah. So actually that was a feedback from the community. They actually wanted us to. So this was like a proposal from the community, which was, how about we have from the public sale. No, not for us, actually. So it started with, they wanted to do a cliff on the public sale, and they wanted to say, how about we have 3.3% of the public sale rounds released every day for a month, instead of, and so we looked at it, we actually did a poll, and a lot of the community wanted it. But then from a technical perspective, it was just a little bit,
it's tough to amend when, you have these. So you basically, and you put the cliff in for the,
so we put the cliff in for the team, because we would have originally had it at the day one over 24 months, but then we were like, okay, as a show of faith and our belief in the project,
I like that. I mean,
we're in it for the long term.
I like that, John. I would prefer, obviously longer, but in this time, I guess you want to see some of the team perhaps capitalize. But here's the question: how do we sort of feel confident that even the team post 6 months, when the cliff finalizes and teams can essentially start to, do what they want with their small percentages as it moves across for that 18-month period? What gives us the confidence that they, won't sell their own tokens, even in their private sale, for example?
Sure. I mean, I think partially because the staking is going to be so, I can speak for myself. I can speak for a lot of our team. We're in it for the long haul. We believe in the path towards decentralization of the DAO. We think we have a very solid shot of, becoming a very successful DAO in its truer sense, like not just a successful economically, but like have a truly decentralized, autonomous organization that's run by the community that we're kind of like the leaders of, which is very cool in and of itself.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, there is just the financial element of, if there is any selling of tokens, let's do it in a responsible manner. Right. And that obviously requires working with, a professional trading shop, with our liquidity providers to make sure that anything that's sold is going to be, making sure that it's not really impacting.
That's important to know. So are you confident you've got the right mix of liquidity support, the legit market maker, the legit, the backers?
100%.
Okay, because again, actually, to be frank, there's so much BS out there and dodgy market makers attached to certain parties and to certain teams, and all kinds of crap goes on. So it gives us confidence knowing you're taking that legit route.
100%. And actually, this is an extension to any private sale investors. They're also eligible to be, if they want to sell, we would suggest them to sell through us.
Okay.
To make sure that, so we already have this set up with our.
So once again, so you don't affect those, those fundamental supplies. Make sure that you maintain the integrity of your growth, I guess.
And also just to go back to kind of like the manualness of the process, I personally did the entire private round SAFTs and the pre-sale or pre-IMO SAFTs myself.
Wow.
So I manually did the entire first two rounds for all these individuals. So I've been talking with all of them constantly about how this works and all these different things.
And John, let's discuss this. Since you're the only person in the world who really can, what was the deciding factor? How did you distinguish, or how did you, I guess, go through the vetting process when it comes to those who should be entitled to take part in that private sale? Obviously, it's a tough question because people get pissed about the hierarchy of access. It happens right across finance, though. So you're in that difficult position of discerning who should and who shouldn't.
Sure. For the private round, we did have a fairly substantial minimum requirement of 100,000.
Okay.
And we actually did have.
So that's the strategic element.
Strategic element, which we had. We had a lot of strategics, and we actually are going to be announcing our latest sometime next week, I think.
Sounds like you have some big ones, because if you've capped it, you've got a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a lot of very solid ones, and we're excited about the most recent one that we'll be announcing. Also nice segue from the market making side, because they're one of the one of the leaders in that space.
That's good.
Anyway, so we also had an uncapped pre-IMO round, which was a minimum entry of about 5,000, and that one was more than, I think, 20 or 25 times oversubscribed at the time.
Okay.
In terms of notional value of capital that wanted to be put in. So the round itself was about $1 million, and we had about 20-ish million of interest just specifically for the pre-IMO.
Right. And John, when you did this, did you make sure that they can offer you something more than just investment? Because obviously, I've been an advisor before, and you want to make sure that you get a bang for your buck. So it wasn't just about them throwing capital in to create sort of this liquidity buzz or to create more of this investment buzz. There's got to be more there. So did you demand more from them than just
100%.
capital?
At least for the private round, yes. So it was, we either requested that they would stake assets with us, or of course there's like marketing and liquidity provisions and all these other different things that helps, some of a more promotional element. The marketing was a key piece, obviously, and obviously we want them to stake. So a lot of our bigger investors have fairly substantial holdings of DOT, particularly. Some of them even invested in DOT, which we were very happy with. And we believe that they'll come and be some of our biggest nominators and delegators in the beginning.
That's
so
awesome. Now here's a tough one. What about transparency? I had response when I spoke with Dia recently. There wasn't, a great discussion I had with Paul, but one of the things I would have liked to have seen is more transparency about some of those initial investors. Mm-hmm. He mentioned the idea of NDA, and we couldn't really talk about that. What about you? Like, what are your thoughts on those being known? Those parties that have put their name to the SAF, for example.
I think everyone that's in our round is proud to be part of the project, and I don't think we have any unnamed institutional investors other than the one that we're going to be announcing shortly. So we want them to be proud to be part of our project. And,
Got it. Now let's go across to the more contentious aspect of influence. It's ironic me talking to you about this, but we also need, marketing. We need those parties that are willing to continue the narrative. I would suspect with you won't need that much. With proof is in the buzz you already have now. But did you also engage in that world? Because for me, in my role, I'm fortunate enough to have known a bit about the space since 2017. And there certainly are parties like consultants and agents working in the space, but there's also groups of influencers that want to get into these allocations, want to get into invest in you guys as well. So what happened there? Were there influencers who are taking a lead role here?
We have I think we have a crazy amount of particularly crypto Twitter influencers who took a big interest in our project. Yep. Which we're obviously happy and glad that they're so interested, but we did require that anyone we wanted to work with has a vested interest in our project.
Okay. And what does that mean in that sense? Let's be explicit.
They put their money at risk.
Okay, so they put their money where their mouth is and invest.
Essentially yes.
Not just get paid up front. That's
not just
cool,
get paid up front.
Because
they had to put in money.
And John, let's let the public know. You must get inundated at the beginning with all of these requests. All these statements of this is what I'm worth. Did it astound you how much some of them wanted? Let's be real in terms of. Okay, so a lot of them wanted the payments. You said no to all of that crap, and you said, look, if you really want to support us, put your money in, and we'll have a discussion. So was that the general consensus and the general approach you took with everyone, whether that be a YouTuber influencer, whether that be a Twitter influencer, just in the broader space of influence? Did you say, look, if you want to help us, show us?
Yeah, pretty much. I think this is our first YouTube interview. And as you very well know, just as I know, you're not getting paid for this.
No.
You don't have any of our tokens.
Nope.
You did it purely from interest.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But maybe after this interview, maybe. I don't invest easily, so.
Yeah. No, but yeah, so we did not, we haven't done any of that actually.
Honestly, I know this sounds, like I'm harping on, but I really appreciate this discussion about the token. The transparency is so rare from someone in your seat. So 100%. Going back to those tokenomics, great to see. Congratulations for making sure that you've got those built-in staking rewards, because that's really the crux of it. And then also making sure that you had success all the way through into that private sale. Now, the big question is what happens at that mainnet post ERC20 trials, into that utility phase. Are you confident that you're going to have all the liquidity built in to then start to see an emergent use case?
Sorry, could you repeat that question one more time? I just had someone, I just saw at the corner of my eye, someone's claiming exit scam in our group, and they've posted it about 100 times. But
right, well, we will make sure that we get through this interview quickly so you can address those.
No worries.
But basically,
obviously it's not an exit scam since we're still on.
Right, and we're talking about this transparency with this whole design, but really I'm just getting to the point, alluding to, now you're in that ERC20 trial phase, moving to mainnet. You build everything for and geared for that utility.
Yes.
Everything about the private sale is just really to get that narrative up, to get the weight and value of the token built in, so you can have more than this. And that is the proof of utility. So are you confident we're going to see that fundamental mass adoption factor? And that is utility. Without that, forget it.
Yeah, I really do think so. I think, again, timing is key. We're going to be launching at a big DeFi bull run. Polkadot timing is perfect. We're supporting this ecosystem very heavily. And, we believe that that part is really crucial and elemental, as well as, having a product that easily allows people to, get on and understand how to use it if they're not, super crypto native.
Yep.
And back to the private sale side of things, if they don't put their money at risk, as well as add that, strategic support of staking and nominating with us, then that's something that's not that interesting for us. So we had that feedback from our private sale institutional investors. So we believe that our kind of assets under delegation, as we want to call it, AUD, because I guess they have TUL or TVL and AUM and whatever. So let's call it assets under delegation. We think we'll have substantial assets under delegation just on the staking side, very, very quickly out the gate.
And that's important because that also balances the risk with those parties as they continue to unlock as well. And what I also like is that we're talking about fundamentally a 2-year sort of time span for you guys to finalize, your whole token allocation as well. So that's a 2-year, project built in bare minimum.
And actually, it's so our council is serving on 2-year terms as well. So, we're in this position for 2 years. God forbid if any. Well, if we do something bad, we can get kicked out, but minimum of 2.
Well, that's the beauty of the DAO. So, let's hope, but I like the fact that there is that longevity in the design, because once, as you said, the really dodgy parties, they won't do that. They'll make sure that there's the opportune, maximum unlock as quickly as possible. You haven't done it. Now, one of the things that I really liked was, I guess for the hype aspect as well, doesn't hurt to have it, is the potential for up to 50% of the total supply to be burned over time, with the burning element. So when it comes to scarcity, we've seen that with Andre Cronier's Wi-Fi. It's super scarce in terms of number. It's always sort of a carrot for many in the space. This could be also another one for you.
Definitely. I mean, I think, we depending on how things go with some of our functions, the burning element is something that can be voted on from a governance perspective. So community proposals can happen. The council could propose burns for any number of different things. And then of course you have Mantra Pool, which is a burning mechanism. And actually I think we're going to be implementing some semblance of a burn for opening and closing CDPs. So those collateralized debt positions. So, that can scale pretty quickly to burn a lot of ohm, if we get a lot of users, which we're pretty excited about. And then I guess the other thing which brings a scarcity element to our project is that so remember I said there's 25% of our staking assets that get sent into the Mantra Pool. So 25% of our rewards get sent to the Mantra Pool weekly basis. 50% of those assets actually are used on the open market to buy back ohm.
Yeah, and that also strengthens the internal, I guess, supply. It rejuvenates the project so that it can be utilized as intended. So it's not speculative, but can be used for utility.
Exactly. So we want as much. I mean, to be honest, one of the things that we're struggling with at the moment is we are, let's call it cash rich, but ohm poor.
Yeah. And that often happens with popular startups. I've seen this happen in the space before, where you have to have an incentive for them to bring it back, for you to get it back. So that's why these things you're talking about are actually imperative. Do you think that this will happen rapidly?
We're trying to get it back as quickly as possible.
Oh, good luck, because people don't want to be giving you back there, however, at the moment. It's quite funny. Now, mate, let's discuss the foundation. It is a separate legal entity entirely. Why? Right. What is it about, and why do you need to have it in the first place?
So we have the foundation set up in the Seychelles currently. And essentially the Seychelles Foundation, again, is set up so that the token holders are the beneficiaries of how we can operate in the kind of more traditional sense. Okay. So we have a Seychelles entity, as well as a foundation, as well as an IBC, an International Business Corporation.
Got it. I would have liked to have heard you say Switzerland instead of Seychelles, but do you feel...
Well, so currently in Switzerland, I mean, without going into too much, our, the ohm token is, let's just say it's seen favorably in the Seychelles for the type of structure that we're having it at the moment, while we work out, other kind of more
utility-based aspects. And then once that happens, I'd like to see more of this evolve so that,
100%
the world. Do you feel optimistic that will happen?
I do. We started this project with no money.
Mm.
I mean, honestly, no money. We spent maybe $3,000 on AMAs just to get things moving, and we had no money. I mean, no one was getting paid anything. It was all just getting stuff figured out, at least on the Mantra side. I mean, Rio has its own things, but we built this like with, again,
is it fair
nothing.
To say,
so
is it fair to say, John, that you wouldn't have been able to do this without Rio? Because obviously they
of course.
You just, you couldn't afford to build from the outset. Okay, so you bootstrapped it with their support from the beginning. Amazing job so far. Everyone's now discussing this as one of the top, I guess, projects of the day. So a huge roadmap built in as well. Do you want to touch on any of those things that excite you with regard to the point we are at now in Q3, or are we in Q3? I think we are. Moving across into Q4 and beyond.
Yeah, so right now the biggest kind of development roadmap is to launch our staking and governance platform. So those are the two key things that we want to launch out the gate. That'll include any number of different validators that we can have ready. And I think one of the things we're going to be doing up until that is announcing, every couple of days, a new validator that we're going to be supporting, in the future. So that'll have a ton of different announcements coming up over the next 2 months, to get launched, get ready for our actual launch. So we'll have all of these ready to go that you can liquidity mine Ohm with by the time our platform's launched, which would be awesome, because you'd be able to kind of get into those communities, right?
Yeah.
Get Ohm into those communities, and then we'll also have the governance.
And that's also going to affect. I'm sorry to jump in, but everyone loves talking about price. The more this gets used, and the more that it gets applied to different communities, even with regard to the things we were talking about before, when it comes to staking, all of it's going to affect the value of your token. You can't say that, but I can. And it's even with the burning, all of this is going to add more weight to what is today, a certain value. But let's see this in a month. Let's see this in 2 months. It's going to be a very different scenario.
I hope so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't even think that we were expecting the response that we had, to be completely honest. I mean, it was crazy yesterday. We shut down BitDumb Global.
I heard.
Twice.
Yeah, and you've got other exchanges coming. So, at least you've got these sort of DEXs and SEXs built in to cope with the interest as well. You just simply needed it. And then you've also got the strategic partners as well. Many of them also support more of this sort of, I guess, network of support that, otherwise wouldn't have had to build this out. So those who want to know more, they can go and look at that. I just want to make sure we get through some of this, because I know it's been a long interview. Now, you've touched on regulation. What about the US? I just want to understand, if I'm from the US, what can I do as a participant? Can I speculate? Can I participate?
U.S. investors and U.S. Individuals can. I mean, I'm from the U.S. Can participate as long as they're taking part of the. As long as they're able to register for the different exchanges that we're traded on. I mean, they can take part in the secondary market trading. We are not.
Not
we
prior.
are not prior. So we didn't take any U.S. investors in the primary offering.
Okay, got it.
And yeah, we were very. I mean, that's the one place more than any that you should not accept investors in a token sale unless it's a regulated offering. That goes back to, again, we were working with US regulated broker dealers. So, we know how the game with the SEC works. And not trying to do anything. I mean, if we need to register as a security in the US at a later time, but that's something that's
required right now. And what I like is that this stuff, because we don't want to find out later.
And we know how to do it. I mean, we could do the filings ourselves.
Yep. Okay. That's good to know. Now, with the roadmap you were touching on, what's interesting is what's coming, with regard to Q4 and also Q1. So things like, for example, live mobile app, more work being done on staking, and then, whatever's meant to be coming next year in Q1. So what do you think is one of the things that is not yet done that you think is really something people should be preparing for when it comes to Mantra?
I think the Mantra pool is going to be awesome. And again, kind of to particularly because we're going to be accruing staking rewards for months, maybe 2-3 months before it gets launched. So those initial ones could be big. I mean,
especially with the diversity of tokens. You didn't say them before, but for example, ELA and EOS and XDZ, TRX, ADA. I mean, there's a lot that potentially associated with this move in Q1 and beyond with staking?
We have even more,
and even
too,
more.
So.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the list is just basically bloody long, and this interview could go forever. But it seems like you're moving more and more towards your readiness with the mainnet, and we've already talked about that UI UX definitely coming soon as samples and more beyond that. But I guess a more sort of negative topic to talk about is market manipulation. We see that prominent in the space. We see a lot of the BS, as I said. So how do you kind of monitor that? Because there may be dodgy market makers that you don't know about that are utilized by certain parties that have an interest in your token and have a significant holding. What do you do? Like, do you even bother about this, or just move on and get to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to the fact that I handled the private and pre-sale myself. So we know who has what, essentially.
So you monitor it down to the
the wallet addresses. Yeah, we know who has what, and we track that. And we're obviously we don't want token dumping, and we don't want market sells.
Have you ever been in a situation, John,
someone did yesterday, actually? They sold like 100. They did a market sell of about 150 ETH, dropped it from I think it was at 40 cents at the time down to 26, but it immediately bounced back up within 6 seconds.
But do you ever get in that situation where, because you're monitoring, you have to hey, I noticed what you did there? What do you do? When
a little bit.
That kind of thing?
I think it's just continuing to have these open discussions with everyone, and just know that they have the opportunity to work with someone who can help liquidate at a price that's better,
that's the thing,
as well as not going to hurt the market.
So it's like having the OTC desk kind of thing in that scenario where.
And we do have a preferred OTC partner as well here, who's one of our investors, which is Genesis Block.
I did see that. So that's great to know, because it has all those opportunities built in. If people do want to exit, it doesn't affect the overall sort of performance of.
So they'll be whipping up the OTC pretty quickly, and we actually do a lot of our OTC work through them as well. Clement is a good friend of ours here in Hong Kong. So
John Patrick Mullin, there is so much we could talk about today, and I do have to apologize, because I don't want to come across like I want to FOMO this particular project, or I don't want to, inject any hype, but it has been an honor to speak with you, because clearly you are here for the long term. As someone who doesn't hold the token, hopefully the people are able to take this as an objective discussion today. It hasn't been quite so much. There's a bit of sort of nuance of subjectivity, because I am a fan of Polkadot. I do own Kusama as well, a small amount. But when it comes to looking at what can be done with DAOs, you're certainly innovating, iterating, you're looking at lending as a core focus, throwing in the discussion about DeFi being something that's certainly relevant to Polkadot as well, and the substrate and beyond that. So, mate, thank you once again for introducing what is a community-governed DeFi platform for today and for the future. And most importantly, there are applications that are allowing us to engage in ways that are beneficial for us as people, that can utilize blockchain in ways that we couldn't have imagined perhaps before. Is there anything you'd like to say with regard to how we can learn more, whether that be through the socials or through the different social media channels?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, thanks obviously for the time today. It was awesome. Really enjoyed the discussion. I think we're on for well over 2 hours at this point now. But anyway, so, again, thanks for the time and willingness to have us on here. If people want to find out more, please join our Telegram group. We have multi-language Telegram communities, Russian, English, Chinese, Korean, Thai.
I'll put the links down there for
everywhere. So put the links down there. So yeah, please join our Telegram, follow our Twitter. We're very active on Telegram. All the community members, I wake up to about 500 messages every day on Telegram. So, people have a direct access. We're not blocking that. And we're obviously happy to engage in discussions with everyone and really appreciate the support so far.
Absolutely, mate. Well, thank you again, John, for your time. I really do appreciate it. I know how busy you are, especially right now. Congratulations on the launch of your token. OM is out there as the ERC20, but make sure people are aware that there is the mainnet coming. And as John, very clearly intimated or alluded to, there's a shitload happening in the future for this startup, this team, and this machine, known as Mantra DAO. So make sure you check it out. Make sure you stay tuned. And until next time, it's BlockchainBrad signing out. Take care.